Hey, it's all, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly. Hit the like button, subscribe for more copium-filled commentary, and let's talk about how Blizzard gave in. One of the unshakable pillars that makes WoW what it is has cracked. This door can no longer be closed. It's the end of everything as we know it. The Heartbreaker mount drop rate has gone up. Okay, so maybe it's not a big deal for you, lucky person who got it in the very first try, or for anyone who's gotten it before now, but after listening to years of feedback, the WoW team has finally upped the drop rate of this mount from the Crown Chemical event, at least for the very first clear each day, across the entire account. So if anything, it's not exactly a buff, but it's more like them telling us, hey, instead of running 30 ults a day through this thing, let's have you get the one really good try per day, and then you can choose to punish yourself by running the rest anyway, which a lot of people are still doing, aren't you? But while we don't know exactly what the new drop rate is, it's definitely gone up, with folks on social media posting their new mounts followed with sighs of relief. Understandable when these folks have been counting every attempt that they've made since the Obama administration. Moving on, WoW's Twitter integration is coming to a very abrupt end after 8 years of service. This feature came in the Warlords of Draenor patch 6.1, the often joked about selfie patch, which included Twitter integration but also included high-res Blood Elf models, the Heirloom tab, among other things, which, okay, now that I think about it, yeah, y'all still gonna joke about it, I get it. Whether it has been widely used or not, this move is in response to Twitter announcing that they'll be charging for the use of their API, which means that they would get to charge Blizzard for the right to tweet from the game, potentially to charge for every tweet that is sent. Given that this move is being made only days after Twitter's announcement, it seems pretty clear that Blizzard did not need much time to weigh the pros and cons here, so long Twitter, you were good while you worked. This week, the Mythic Hall of Fame for the Vault of the Incarnates raid has reached 100 Horde guilds at least, with many spots open on the Alliance side to get that coveted spot. With Crossroad Mythic opening up next week without having to wait for the Alliance to fill up their Hall of Fame, we're actually getting it faster than usual. Comparing the first raid from the previous expansion, Shadowlands, Castle Nathria took roughly 2 months for Crossroad Mythic to open. In Dragonflight, it's only going to take a little bit over a month. Also, with the first Mythic clear of the Vault this past December 23rd, the Horde Hall of Fame filled out as of February 8th, which is only 1 week slower than Castle Nathria. Now that's pretty interesting information, but it's only one data point on how the health of Mythic raiding is when we consider the shifting of player taste between raiding and Mythic Plus, and no more China region to contribute to the rankings. Whatever the case though, faster is better, with hopes that it won't be long before the official Hall of Fame is unified and cross-faction guilds are more than just the clickbait thumbnail that I long to make. So apparently, if our alts can't gear up instantly, it's not worth playing the game. That's the out-of-context interpretation that we got from Max, top player and guild master of Team Liquid, and he's not the only one sharing that sentiment. The other day he sent out a tweet, lamenting his frustrations of how much work it'll take to get alts up to start endgame, that he would love to play them, but just knowing what it'll take to get to that point is discouraging. There is a lot to unpack here. I tried to do it on live stream, but I thought it better to write this all out and share where I understand this statement, even though I don't entirely agree with it or can even come up with a better solution. This is mostly going to be a conversation that involves Mythic Plus and how it relates to the rest of the World of Warcraft, but even if that game mode is not your thing, I would love for you to stick around. I think this is an interesting topic worth discussing. It's easy to read tweets like these as baffling, and that was my initial reaction too, like, oh gosh, I guess we can't ever be happy, huh? It wasn't so long ago that many players, including myself, crusaded against the idea of borrowed power that had to be grinded through side content. Remember having to do zone content for rep to unlock an Azerite Essence rank, or farming to get a key to run Horrific Visions to power a cloak so we could raid better, or doing Torghast for Soul Ash for legendaries. Basically, the whole idea of having to do things that we don't want to do, but we have to because there's something that we need to participate in the content that we actually want to do. Dragonflight stripped away all of that and shoved it into talent points and tier, which, has its own issues, but it's not exactly a part of this conversation. The point is that now we don't have to worry about these distracting but required grinds. We can simply play the game, get good, get gear, make profit. So Why make a statement like this? Why are folks like Max pushing the goalpost back even further to where gearing up, notably for alts, is given the same negative energy as borrowed power? Let's try to have an open mind about this. This mindset comes from the type of player that he is, and the opportunities that Mythic Plus offers thanks to the WoW team. Many of us are familiar with the phrase, the game begins at max level. We've heard it, maybe we've said it, and we live by it. It's not hard to admit that WoW builds itself on max level content. Dragonflight is taking some steps to alter our perceptions of that, but for now we can claim that all the cool things happen in the latest expansion. Players are funneled to the newest zone because that's where the item level is. But Mythic Plus has, since its very beginning, stood out in a unique way. In raids, the highest difficulty is Mythic, but when the puzzle is solved and the strats are figured out, that's kind of it, the raid is on farm. PvP is pretty dynamic in that you're fighting to get to the top, but if you're at the top, then challenges need to come to you. But with Mythic Plus, you can have the best gear, you can be part of the best team who cleared like plus 35s that no one else in the world has. You're the best. So now, how about timing a plus 36? The scaling nature of Mythic Plus creates potentially limitless gameplay. The mindset is a little bit like speedrunning old games where, people try to find new ways to shave off a bit more time. Let's say you time that 36, but with a plus 37 with this and that affix, we're gonna need a whole different approach. Imagine a Mythic Plus season that was like permanent, or it lasted for years and years. You bet that there's going to be an audience who would play that to find the best route and composition and employ every exploit possible to time the highest key. And there would be an audience willing to watch them try. What Mythic Plus has done to top-end players like Max is to change the perspective where it's time to really start playing the game. For them, leveling is a chore. Professions are a waste of time. Lore isn't relevant at all. They just want to take on the highest challenge. And because Mythic Plus scales infinitely, attention will naturally gravitate in that direction. For top players, the game starts at plus like 16 or 21 or whatever. And this is not as out of touch as one would think. At lower skill levels, players have asked for in-game level boosts and gear catch-ups, with the WoW team acquiescing. They built the game kind of around that. With that in mind, it's a little bit more understandable for top players to want primal infusions to be tradable, or for a Keystone Master to allow Valor upgrades account-wide. We might not agree on this point, but the point is to understand where these takes are coming from. And in follow-up tweets, Max has shared that he knows that his perspective is very specific to himself and his playstyle. Now, I'd love to get your takes, but since I'm already talking, I guess I'll go first. For now, I'm happy that the idea of gear catch-ups does not reach that mythic level. I think an easy path to 5 392 item level pieces of, crafted gear, I think that's great. I totally understand why people want alts to gear faster after the first time with their mains, but I also think that the rate at which a player grows into their class should sort of go up at the same rate that they obtain gear for that class. That's why when I look at how catch-ups work in Dragonflight Season 1 so far, it feels fair because you get caught up during the season, but to a point. It would be awkward to see players at the plus 16 level and higher all suddenly move towards rolling frost mages because that's suddenly the meta, and it'll be hard to trust who's actually good with the flavor of the month class. In fact, it might be a flavor of the week class. Consider the ease of switching between alts. It could potentially create this expectation that if you even want to start playing at a high level, you've got to chase the meta. As for people amassing tons of primal infusions and such, I see that as mostly a loose end and an unfortunate consequence of the WoW team not wanting to limit rewards, which is also why I've been proposing that for the future there should be a higher Valor cap for Season 2 and to lift the cap altogether a little bit sooner. I seriously could take up another half hour talking about nothing but this, but I'm going to pass this off to you to share your takes. Let's talk up one of 1007's biggest features, the Forbidden Reach Zone. There may be a few surprises in store still, likely with story quest content, but we have a good idea of how the zone is going to play out on a day-to-day basis. This comes after the WoW team talked more specifics on what this special ring and these Primordial Stones really mean for this patch, which is one part soft nerf in Season 1 and a nice little intro helper item for Season 2. I'll talk more on that a little bit later. Now, in the current PTR, the ring that houses these stones is it's straight up just lying on the ground, waiting to be picked up. You pick it up along with a quest, you turn it in, and then you have the ring within minutes. From there you explore the Scara vaults, basically climbing the inside of a tower with dozens of doors to open that you navigate by solving small puzzles, but mostly through opening a bunch of doors which require keys. According to the Blue Post, these keys can be found throughout the Forbidden Reach zone off of rare mobs, treasures, and maybe more. It doesn't currently reflect on the PTR, but according to a Blue Post, these keys are going to be account tradable. Meanwhile, the many stones that you're going to find can be grounded down into a currency that you can use to upgrade stones that you like, or to buy a random assortment of stones, hopefully to get something else. Ultimately, we'll be able to create a customized item level 424 ring, which won't have main or secondary stats, but instead have this customizable proc. So here's the ring that I made on the PTR, for example. The first stone makes it so that I deal fire damage in a cone whenever I interrupt an enemy. Now, as a protection paladin, this works with both Rebuke and Avenger Shield. It doesn't work with Divine Toll or Resonance, sadly, but there's no internal cooldown, so if I'm locking an enemy down, I'm gonna do a lot of extra damage. The other stone that I have gives me a damage return buff whenever I absorb damage, aka do a bubble, which means it'll proc off my bulwark, and it happens to work with gear that procs absorbs, like the Primal Ritual Shell and the Cobalt Assembly Ring. The last stone makes me deal additional fire damage from the two other stones, so this is just one example, but I think it's pretty neat. I could also sim the fun out of it too, but for a mid-patch, I think this sounds like a lot of fun. The maximum item level means that I'll be using it at least early in Season 2 content, and even after it's outlived its usefulness in Season 2, I can re-customize the ring with stones like these and use it in Legacy content. From my testing, the ring works everywhere, even the Mage Tower, although it gets scaled down. Now, some have commented that this is a waste of dev resources and that these efforts should go towards actual season content and not stuff that we're only going to use for a few months. But here's my response to that. If this came out at the start of the season and it was meant to be Season 2 gear, we would be having an entirely different conversation. We'd be studying how to min-max our gains, and we would be complaining over the RNG and the time gating, the FOMO over having to farm keys off of rares to open doors, to get the stone currency, to get the upgrades for the ring that we need for the new raid. Making this ring looks like it's going to be pretty easy, especially because we can funnel keys from other characters if we want to. That's the sort of freedom that players would love to have, but Blizzard does not want to encourage that sort of degenerate behavior. But in the mid-season, that's something the WoW team is definitely okay with. The timing makes all the difference. So I think this will be fun to try out, and to see if this idea of fun gear that overlaps between two seasons is going to work out. Also in this week's PTR build, new Feat of Strength achievements were added to acknowledge players who participated in certain events that are no longer accessible, notably accolades involving the Argent Dawn and Naxxramas and the trolls in zul'gurub. We've seen the addition of ancient recipes to make gear that's no longer obtainable, which is great, but now rumors are starting to go around about what this all means. Because why add Feat of Strength achievements now? It could be because we're going to have the opportunity to go back to these areas and relive these events through like time walking or something. But consider this, what if somewhere down the line over in WoW Classic, characters will be able to be imported into the modern game, allowing for a kind of separation between which characters did what and when. I'm going to leave that thought in your heads, and that's the show. So we got past Raszageth, Phase 1, much like how a plane eventually lands because of engine failure. At our level, the first phase on Heroic is super intense. Like in my head, I have some ideas on how to handle it better, but I also feel kind of bad overthrowing the team into the grinder for a while so we can fine-tune our process. This is part of the challenge of raiding as a guild. Like, if the going gets tough, at the end of the day, the guild should be staying together. If a pug doesn't work out, it just doesn't work out, and oftentimes the group won't meet each other again. And there are two sides to that, where I get to see us as a team learn and grow, but the road is paved with blood and repair bills. With Cross-Realm Mythic opening up soon, we can expect Mythic nerfs to the raid, and maybe some tuning down on the Heroic level as well. I think we'll be able to do this boss as is with a lot more practice. This was our first real night of attempts, so I've got high hopes. The game's opening up a bit more next week. Like I said, there's Cross-Realm Mythic opening up and the lifting of caps for Valor and Conquest. Meanwhile, I want to dive into 1007 content and play with these stones. I love random fun effects, and this is right up my alley. I'm gonna try and produce a little video over the weekend where I go over each of these stones and try to cook up like some fun combinations for progression or outdoor or legacy content as well, and it should be fun. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel, catch me live, and like this video too. That'll always help. Let's give thanks to our wonderful audience over on Twitch. I apologize for the internet outage the other day. To our awesome patrons, and hey viewer, thank you for making it to the end. You fed the algorithm, and I don't know why, but the algorithm also loves it when you watch another video right after this one, and it doesn't even have to be me. YouTube is just weird. But anyway, have a great weekend, folks, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.